G'day, you beautiful Bomber fans, and happy belated New Year. We are 2 weeks into 2026 already, and I'm only just now making my first video, so apologies for that. My break ran longer than expected, but we are back. Hope you're all doing well. Hope you enjoyed your new year. Hope you are all staying safe. Regional Victoria viewers, many of you of the channel, I hope you're all doing well, and everyone else in the world for that matter. But yeah, we're back for 2026. Going to be a big year for the club, really interesting year for the club, and I think it's going to be a big year for the channel too. I've got some really fun videos planned around the corner, some fun guests coming on the channel who I think you guys are going to absolutely love. The first video of the year was originally going to be a Q&A that's on Friday. I'm still going to make that video, and you know, feel free to ask some big questions about the Bombers in the comments below, and they could feature on that video on Friday. But I just couldn't wait anymore. I just wanted to yap about the Bombers, and luckily some news came out in the last couple of days, which has given me the opportunity to do what I do best, and that is yap nonsensically for minutes, for hours, for days. Who knows how long this video is going to be. Let's get into it. Alrighty, let's start off by celebrating because we finally have something to talk about. As a wise scholar by the name of Troy Bolton once said in the critically acclaimed 2009 masterpiece High School Musical 3, the boys are back. That is right. The boys are back at the hangar, training the house down. I think he was talking about Essendon when he sang that song. But yeah, it's fun. You know, obviously there's not a lot to talk about in that little Christmas, New Year's period, but as soon as teams return to training, that is when it really ramps up for us footy nerds, because there's a big shift in I guess the discussions in training from November, December to January, February. So in November, December, you got that fitness-based training. It's really hard work. The players are trying to get their bodies in a good place for the upcoming season. As soon as the new year hits, as soon as January and February training sessions start, you get that real switch from, you know, a fitness and that body work to the mind and structure of a footy game, because this is where you start to see match sim. And match sim is really important for us footy nerds, because this is when you start to see, you know, clues about potential position switches, how the team could line up structurally, what the system's going to look like. As soon as match sim starts, that is when that's when peak delusion starts. That is the absolutely Essendon boys. They like to say November and December is peak delusion. That's where it kicks off. But in January and February is where it explodes. This is where you get to see all the articles about the players tearing it up on the training track. We're going to get match sim very, very soon. We've got sprinkles of it already, but we're going to get proper match sim very soon. Games really aren't that far away, by the way. State of Origin is in exactly a month. A week after State of Origin, you've got the practice game against Richmond. Games are right around the corner, so you're going to start to see these practice games at training, these match sim type scenarios at trainings, and that's going to be really fun for us as we start to learn, you know, what the team could be looking like in 2026, who could be playing where, how we could be lining up, how the team could be moving the footy, what our game plan could potentially look like. Now, the boys only returned to training last week, so there really aren't any proper standouts yet, but you've got a few interviews from players hyping up some of the younger guys. Dyson Sharp is getting so much love, and he is just about a certified lock for round one, I'd say, against the Hawks, or, you know, fingers crossed, touch wood. Jacob Farrow started to ramp up his training a little bit. I thought he was a little bit quieter in the back half of 2025, which I don't mind for a young player, but Mason Redmond's got a lot of praise for Jacob Farrow as well. You've got some young guys as well putting their hand up. Isaac Kako's been great. Nate Caddy, Archer Day Wicks has been surprising quite a few out there as well. Quite a few players, younger players especially, are looking at the goods already, which is good, but I'm not going to go too early on them until we get to the match sim, because that's when it really starts, and I'll have some videos about the match sim, about the practice matches for you guys planned as well. Now, if you guys want to get out to the hangar and watch the boys train, there are 3 morning sessions a week: Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Now, the Mondays and the Fridays are the must-see sessions if you want to watch the boys train. That's where they do stuff that you don't want to be doing in the heat. There's a lot of running, a lot of hard work. These are the match day intensity sessions. Matt Innes is trying to replicate match fitness and match game scenarios and situations for the boys, so it's not a big shock to them when the season starts. That's why the Wednesday sessions are actually a bit of a breeze. That's where they kick the feet up and relax. That is their rest day for the weekend. Mondays and Fridays are hard. That's where you want to go out and watch the boys train if you're going to do so. So I'd prioritize those 2 days. But yeah, expect plenty of training videos to come out. I'll have some guests on the channel, some track watchers. There's going to be lots of match sim in the next few weeks. Lots of hungry young men. I'm a hungry young man, but I mean, you know, proper hungry for footy young men who want to be out there playing. You know, when you have 15 debutants in a year, you've got a lot of players who have tasted AFL footy and want to taste it again. Expect there to to be some interesting discussions in the next few weeks as we really decide and I guess decipher what our team could look like in round 1 2026, because at this stage, who knows? Alrighty, continuing on training, there is some injury news to discuss. Some of it good, some of it not so good. It's a bit of a mixed bag. We're going to start with the good. We're going to rattle off with the guys in rehab who are progressing well. We obviously had those ACL boys. There's 4 players with ACLs at the moment. 3 of those players were actually in Qatar, the Aspetar facilities, continuing their rehab. Those players were Tom Edwards, Nick Bryan, and Lewis Hayes. The first 2 players there, Tom Edwards and Nick Bryan, are progressing really, really well. Edwards was doing heaps of running in 2025. It really surprised me just how much running he was doing to end the year, and that's continued in 2026. Nick Bryan is probably the furthest ahead. He's doing some little training drills here and there. So is Tom Edwards with his kicking, but Nick Bryan is doing some ruck drills already on that knee, which is really good. They should return, if not ahead of schedule, on time, which is good. Lewis Hayes is probably flagging behind a little bit. He's limited to mainly just the gym at the moment. I haven't seen him do too much running at all, so maybe he's a bit behind schedule, but I think for a younger player that's not a huge worry. And of course, Nick Martin obviously redid that ACL, which is not ideal at all. He had to have surgery on that, so he'll be out for 2026. You've got Harry Jones, Archie Perkins, and Will Setterfield. These guys were limited to pretty much just doing cycling on those bikes at the side of training at the end of 2025. There wasn't much running at all on those legs and feet done. Archie Perkins has that groin complaint. Jones and Setterfield have ankle and foot issues respectively. But the good news is those 3 players have ramped up their work a lot since the last time we saw them. They are all out there running, all doing well, and hopefully all going to be integrating into training fairly soon, which would be ideal for 3 players who are probably under a bit of pressure coming into 2026. Jordan Ridley had that minor hamstring setback near the end of 2025. He was doing a lot of work on it at the end of 2025 as well, doing a lot of running on it, and he's still doing a lot of running on it too, just hasn't integrated fully into main training yet, but that will happen. I guess the club is being overly cautious when it comes to Ridley and these players that are have suffered those hamstring or muscle injuries in the past. Sullivan Roby is still not in full training. The club again is being cautious with that one and making sure that hot spot isn't hiding somewhere, because the worst thing that could happen here is the club bring him back into training early, that hot spot becomes a fracture, and he's out for an extended period of time with stress fractures that you don't want having. So the club being cautious with guys like Roby and Ridley is fine by me. They might miss out on a couple of weeks of training that they could have been training for, but the good news is, it might help them in the long term, especially with Roby, who's a younger player. The main injury news to come out in the last few days, today specifically, I guess, is Cillian Bourke. So our Irish recruit, it was reported by Mr. Cal Toomey today, at the time of filming, that he had injured his hamstring and was sent for scans. We don't know the severity of that injury yet. We don't know if it's minor or major, but either way, it is unfortunate because he was actually exciting a lot of people out at the track with his improvement. He's been improving quickly with his footy in his short time at the club. So it's a pretty annoying injury because, with these young players who are fast learners, you really want them out there. Burke's someone who could benefit out there, being on the track and soaking in information from those around him in these preseason sessions this time of the year. We don't know the extent of the injury yet, of course, but even a couple of weeks away from main training is not ideal for a player like Cillian Bourke. Not a disaster by any stretch of the imagination, but it's not ideal for a young and improving player. So hopefully he is back sooner rather than later. I will say though, our list is in a fairly good spot, all things considered. We obviously, there's a few players on the sideline, but most of these injuries we have from the 2025 season. They're a long-term, ACLs, ankles, feet. The injuries that occurred during training in the off-season are minor at the time of filming. Ridley's going to be back soon, I reckon. Bourke is an unfortunate setback, but he's not a best 23 player. And Sullivan Roby, young player, comes to the club. The club can't do medicals on him before the draft. We find that hot spot, put him on ice for a little bit, and he should be back soon as well. So aside from that, everyone's looking good. A lot of the players that are injury prone have been looking really good. Fingers crossed, cross all the fingers you can, touch all the wood you can, but at the moment, the Bombers are, all things considered, looking pretty good and healthy. Obviously those injuries are just occurring or carrying over from the 2025 season. Aside from that, everything has been pretty minor. touch wood, fingers crossed. Now, obviously, the injury to Cillian Bourke is not ideal. Injuries are never ideal, but it has given us the opportunity to talk about him a little bit more, which I think is important because we don't know much about him. He's been playing another sport in another country. So I chatted to some Irish journalists, to some Gaelic football fans over the break, over the new year to find out more about Cillian Bourke as a player and a person. And there's one story that I got told a few times, by Kieran, by Graham and Gordon. So thank you guys for responding to me. And it's the story of, it's one game in particular that really defines Cillian Bourke as a player and a person, and there's some similarities to Essendon a little bit as well, I think. So some context before we start. Offaly are, this team that have struggled for years in the midfield, and they have this young Cillian Bourke burst onto the scene at the age of 18. He's not just a promising raw athlete, but he's a genuinely ready-made young man at 18, playing seriously good Gaelic football, alongside seniors, and he really he's kind of the face of this resurgence of sorts for Offaly, who haven't been the best team for years now. And there's this semi-final game where Offaly are playing against Kildare. It's the deciding game to see who plays in the championship. Kildare are kind of like Geelong. Offaly are kind of like Essendon. Offaly haven't beaten Kildare since 2006. It's been that long since they won, and most of the games they play are, they're uncompetitive. It's easy. Kildare are dominating Offaly in the midfield. This particular semi-final, that doesn't happen, and a big reason for that is Cillian Bourke, who's, he's this resurgence in the midfield for Offaly. He's a powerful young player. He's not only, standing up against a better Kildare side, he's doing it as an 18-year-old who really shouldn't be doing that. The game is close. The game is tight. Often Offaly come into these games with no hope. They're often uncompetitive, but this one is close and tight, and it comes down to the final kick of the game, which is Cillian Bourke, which is off his boot. He takes the ball from a long distance situation, punts it at goal for a 2-pointer that would have sent Offaly into the championship. He did miss narrowly, but that miss is what has been called the miss that mattered, because it showed the hope that Offaly have now, and it was a big defining moment in their season, in Bourke's season, because it was a young 18-year-old, the face of this resurgence, who's come on with this pressure kick. He takes the moment himself. He's not only matching it against his bodies for the whole game, but he takes the most important kick, and he takes it himself. He misses, but it's the fact that a young man is even doing that in that situation, which many found so impressive. I was told this story a couple of times, and it really shows a lot. And I think there was someone who said after this game they knew that people from AFL in Australia were going to come looking for him because he was just such an impressive young athlete. So yeah, it's interesting. You don't often talk about players missing shots as their defining moments, but the defining moment for Cillian Bourke's career in Ireland that I'm finding in my conversations seems to be that miss in the semi-final. It shows a lot about his character, his mentality, and his presence at such a young age. Now, a bit more news before I love you and leave you. Essendon's search for a CEO is ongoing. It is continuing. There have been some attempts, some unsuccessful attempts for replacements of Craig Votso. Votso obviously was our former CEO. He shocked everyone by resigning late last year to be back home with his family in Adelaide. Poor guy. But yeah, he's resigned. Essendon have approached Melbourne Storm CEO Justin Rodsky, who was actually formerly with Essendon a few years ago. He said no, he's staying with the Melbourne Storm. Essendon also approached Travis Auld, who will remain with his Australian Grand Prix role. Nick Ryan is the acting CEO for now. That is Nick Ryan, not Nick Bryan, who is our ruckman, not our CEO. But the search continues for a full-time replacement for Craig Votso. James Hurd's name has come up a bit. I don't know. I'm not going to comment on that. Craig Votso, there was talk about him continuing a part-time role with the club, whether it is based in Adelaide or part-time travelling in Melbourne, but we don't know. We don't have any details about that for now. And finishing up today, we have some news that surprises absolutely no one. So Zach Merrett has parted ways with his player manager Tom Petroro after last year's failed trade request to the Hawthorn Hawks. Now, say what you will about the club deciding to keep him or Hawthorn not offering up enough money, but the fact is Merrett wanted to leave. He requested a trade quite late. He took the nuclear approach and it didn't work. He stayed with the Bombers, which was massive. This was a huge story, a really controversial story, probably one of Essendon's biggest stories since that whole Asada Wada scandal. Merrett turned from a certified club legend in 2025 to one of the most divisive players in the league as a whole. You can blame Merrett, you can blame Essendon, blame Hawthorn, but really, if we take a step back and think about it from Merrett's perspective, this is a guy who, you know, I think he'd feel pretty hard done by, not just by the clubs involved, by Essendon and Hawthorn, but by his management, who I think we can assume pushed the nuclear approach and failed to get the results out of it. And it all came to a head on deadline day, which was absolute TV gold. Tom Petroro, you know, lost his composure. He was running up and down halls. He was yelling at team officials, texting journalists live on air, slandering clubs a little bit in the process. It was a really, really messy, the whole situation, the whole trade saga was messy, but deadline day was messy, and it showed that Tom Petroro clearly lost his composure a little bit in the situation. And, you know, if we're going to guess why Zach Merrett, you know, parted ways with Tom Petroro, I think we can point to this failed trade request. Obviously, there hasn't been confirmation, but we can speculate that that is the reason why. Now, there are reports that Zach Merrett will return to his former manager, Nick Geeshan. What this means for his future is, again, purely the stuff of speculation. It shows that obviously Merrett was not pleased with how everything transpired at the end of the off-season, and if there's another trade attempt in 2026, it will be, you know, a different approach with a different manager, or maybe it's Merrett seeking a fresh start at the Bombers with a different manager away from Tom Petroro. Again, it's the stuff of speculation. A long time till anything happens in the off-season. Obviously, it'll be talked about a lot, you know, as trades situations often are, but for now, Zach Merrett is in the red and black with a new manager. But guys, I think that's all I've got to discuss. I'll have a video out in a couple of days, a Q&A video. It's good to be back. It's good to be back yapping about the Bombers, and there's going to be plenty of yapping to come with some guests who will hopefully be yapping alongside me as well on the channel. Thank you for watching, Bomber fans. Make sure you like the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you are new to the channel, and as always, go Bombers.